Thanks for listening to another episode of the Gifted Performance Podcast. If you're listening or watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, as well as hitting the like button and the notification bell so you never miss a video. If you prefer audio format, search Gifted Performance on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, or your favorite podcasting service, and subscribe today. Make sure you also rate and review the podcast, as that helps us out tremendously. Enjoy the podcast and stay gifted. Welcome back, guys. Another episode of the GPP, the Gifted Performance Podcast, where we give you the knowledge and practical takeaways to improve your own general physical preparedness. Not a lot of GPP talk today with Seb here. We're going to talk history of weightlifting. We're going to talk current affairs in weightlifting. We just wrapped up. By the time this recording goes live, we'll be about 3 weeks removed from a hell of a week of weightlifting, Pan American Championships, European Championships, Asian Championships, and now here we sit 4 months out from the Tokyo 2021 games. Are they still calling it the 2020 games?
It's the 2020 because they got, all the trademarking and that sort of stuff. So it is 2020. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Well, my guest, who kindly corrected me here, is Seb Ostrowicz, the voice, the face of Weightlifting House. Seb, how are you today?
I'm not bad. I'm doing pretty well. Yeah, I'm excited. As I mentioned before we hit record, I've been out of weightlifting for about 3 days now. So this is like the first thing I've done since those big championships. So yeah, I'm excited. Welcome
back. We're glad to lure you back in. It's been a busy couple weeks for you, or a busy last week or so for you. Recording voiceovers, live commentary on all of those. What were some of the highlights there for you? I'm sure it was a really fun week for you.
I mean, I think one of the highlights was realizing that there's an appetite for live commentary. It's one of the things I'd never tried before. I've done voiceover, recorded after the fact and that side of things. But I'd never realized that I could just get guests on and we could just sit and chat and watch weightlifting and people would tune in. And then when you do that, then creating content out of that becomes very easy because you just, you put the lifting video in and then you cut it out and you've got content. So that was actually really exciting, just realizing that there's an appetite for the commentary. And then, of course, I mean, just so many world records, so many all-time world records, new world records in the current weight categories. Yeah, I mean, it was a fantastic month. And we've had like a year off weightlifting, basically, where there have been no competition. So this was such a spectacular return to competition.
With where you are in the world, your gyms have just opened back up. Have you been back? Have you trained at all since the long layoff?
Yeah, I have. So fortunately, right outside where I am, I've got a couple of gyms. So I've got memberships to those. But then also we're in the process of, we've just basically started renting these new premises. Upstairs, office space, media, that kind of thing. And then downstairs, equipment that we sell. And then we're building a gym there as like a perk of being someone who works at Weightlifting House. And there aren't many of us now, but we've still got a few people and we're going to bring more people in. So that's really cool. So it means that when I actually go to work, I can then train and, train in the morning, train in the PM. So that's going to be really awesome just to have a gym right where we're all working.
So gym owner, or at least gym co-owner, added to the resume, a resume that already includes author of The Greatest Weightlifters of All Time, The Glenn Pendlay Method, host of the only weightlifting news show in the world. I have to say, I love that. It makes me laugh every single time when you say that, just the way you say it. You travel all over the world to the biggest weightlifting meets in the world. I mean, what else is there on that resume of yours outside of those things?
Oh, God. I mean, I'm just I've always sort of considered myself as just being the biggest fan of weightlifting. And then out of that, I found a way to sort of market, what that is, what being a fan is. I somehow managed to gain access to, speaking with the people that we all want to learn from. I mean, it's kind of like what you do, and I started doing it and, through the podcast. I started doing it through the podcast and other various means. And I feel like I'm just sort of I just get to be the lucky person who asks all the questions that we want to know and put all the information out there. I guess weightlifter would be the only other thing that I'd add to it. I mean, I've had a couple of years where it's been really poor quality training. But for a good 6-year stint, all I did was train every single day before Weightlifting House sort of grew and took over a little bit.
In Seb's younger years, what were some of your passions then before you really found the world of weightlifting? But by the way, how old are you?
I'm 28.
Okay.
Yeah, just turned.
Okay.
So I've always loved sports. I was in all of the teams growing up. I was in the cross country team, believe it or not, basketball team, rugby teams, athletics teams, cricket, tennis, all of these sorts of things. And then kind of realized that I actually my love for the training far exceeded my love for the competition. And I loved realizing that I could go into a gym and exercise, and I could then come out and actually be better than the people who were previously better than me. And then the competition side of things, I just never loved quite as much. It was a training. So I remember, being like 10 years old and smuggling dumbbells into my bag to go over to a friend's house for a sleepover and getting them out and just wanting to lift with the dumbbells. And then when I was 14, I'd get to my school at like 7:30 a.m. just so, like, before everyone else, so that I could sneak into the gym, because you're not allowed into the gym unless you're 16. And I'd sneak in and I would train every single morning, doing dumb stuff, just bicep curls and machine bench press sort of thing. But you got to start somewhere.
Of course.
So I just, I've always loved all different sports. Then eventually got into rowing, quit that because it sucks, but it's, it's a great sport, but it sucks. And then found CrossFit, realized that people got to work out, like, the thing that I loved, they just got to do all the time, which was the training. And then very quickly, once I started CrossFit, like within the first month, I realized I just wanted to do weightlifting. So got into weightlifting.
Was that transition to weightlifting something was that easy for you, since you had such a strong sporting background and a movement background, or was that first snatch just an absolute abomination?
Yeah, I remember it was an abomination, but it wasn't awful. Like, I think, I couldn't back squat 100 kilos, but I snatched 60 and I cleaned 80. So like my efficiency was already like pretty much. I'm probably less efficient now than I was on day one, to be honest, just because I got stronger. But I mean, there's also the whole thing of, are you really efficient or are you actually just really weak? And probably I was just really, really weak, but had decent awareness of what I was doing with my body. So I could clean the snatch okay from the start. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it was too difficult a transition, honestly. The main thing is just, coming from a sport like rowing, where it's so, well, it's the same movement over and over again, but when you're in a boat, you're actually leaning out over one side of the boat constantly. So half of your body gets significantly stronger and more flexible than the other. So then bringing that into a sport like weightlifting, where everything again is just so in this frontal plane, nothing really changes, that caused a lot of issues that have all led to the fact that I've had a crappy 2 years of training. But other than that, I think all of these different sports probably lent themselves along the line all the way to weightlifting.
Oh yeah, I always, when I hear someone with a very diverse sporting background like that, I think of someone like the stories of like early Ilya Ilyin, of him,
right,
dabbling in all those different sports. I don't know, Seb, I don't want to break this to you in like a negative way. I don't know if you're going to reach the level that Ilya was at. We won't say for sure that you wonon't get there. There's a possibility, but I don't see a 246 in your future.
I feel like when he was 15, he'd already lifted more than I have ever lifted. So,
that sounds about right.
Yeah, I don't think anything's going to suddenly happen now at 28 years of age that's going to catch me up to hit 247, but you never know. You never know.
Seriously. You never know. Don't give up. And as I was scrolling around on the Weightlifting House website, I saw a picture of Ilya reading The Greatest Weightlifters of All Time.
Yeah.
Did he immediately flip to his own page, or was he looking at others?
Well, no, I was really nervous because, growing up in weightlifting, he is like the man.
Yes.
And, I was so interested in him. I'd written, this book, and he was a portion of that book is his career. So when I realized he was in the room next to me, I just grabbed the book and went into the training hall where he was and just sat there, just like trying to pluck up the courage to go over to him. Then I opened the book at his page so that I could walk over and show him. Like, you sort of want to approach with some kind of offering of like, I'm not just here to get a photo. Look at this thing that I did. And so he got really excited about it, read through it, took some photos. Then all of the guys around him who are like, they're kind of aware of when there's going to be good opportunity for media, so they suddenly all started taking photos of us together reading through this book, and then he signed mine, and then the craziest thing was him asking me to sign his copy of the book, which is very strange. And then we've actually become friends, which is nice, but that was the first time I met him, and come to think of it, I'm not sure he did scroll through any of the rest of the book and look at other people. No, he did. He looked through and he saw some of the Kazakh lifters, which made him happy. But yeah, that's that one.
You paint yourself as someone who's quite bashful, but you've got these stories of signing Ilya Ilyan's copy of the book, riding in a car with Lee, or almost riding in a car with Lee Wen,
Yeah.
being face to face, getting footage with Lasha at some of his
Yeah.
greatest training sessions. You seem to have the cojones, the chutzpah, to get yourself in some very interesting situations.
Yeah, I'm just a big believer in, I don't know, just doing absolutely everything you can to get into the situations that you want to, like just clawing, to get in these situations. And so whether that's, reaching out to Liu Xiaojun's team and just promising you'll do basically anything to get an interview and then, getting smuggled into his hotel, or, I've never told anyone this, and I certainly won't ever say who it was or what the country was, but like, I remember at one point getting a phone call and just being threatened by an Eastern European president of one of the countries, and just basically being told, no one will believe this is happening. You can't record it, so you can't prove it. But basically threatening me with some of the things that I was posting online. And I think you sort of have to put yourself in these situations to get good content sometimes. But at the same time, the more you do, the more these things just get thrown at you. So it's not always like you're orchestrating everything from scratch.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of greatest weightlifters of all time, are we going to get a second edition? What's the time course there? Are we
Yes.
close? I don't want to throw any spoilers out there, but divulge whatever you feel you can divulge.
So there has to be a volume 2, which is the women's side. Mm-hmm. And that's something that has to be done. And I wanted to do that instantly. And then it was one of those things where I thought, okay, well, the next 3 months are going to be really busy. So I'll just get through those 3 months and then I'll spend time in it. Because when you do something like writing, it really is, you've got to get everything, all distractions out, sit, with a blank piece of paper and just work for 4 hours and not be distracted by anything. It's really difficult to do. And constantly new things are happening. And I always thought I'd just find some time. And right now I'm at a point where it's like so much is happening. The idea of just removing myself from Weightlifting House for 3 months to write this book is difficult, So we've done all the research. I've got like a list of literally every performance by every international female weightlifter ever, ranked by any metric you want, basically. So all of the data is there. We just need to go through and actually write it. And it's also difficult because so many of the women in the top 50 are Chinese weightlifters, and there is no information anywhere about them, like literally none. So we've had to, we've written to the Chinese embassy and we've said, this will be good. This will look good if we can write this. Can you help provide us with information? They don't get back to you. So like, it's a really difficult book to write. I have done I've made all the edits for an updated version of the men's, because that's just, a few world records change, the numbers shift a little bit. So we should probably just, do a second edition of that one. Because Lash is now obviously in the top 10, whereas previously he was like number 30 or something. So that's got to change. But at some point we will do the women's. And it might just be that I write like the skeleton version of it and then we get someone to, come and actually write it. But we certainly have to do a volume 2 for the women at some point, because they certainly deserve it with how much more. I mean, they're progressing so much faster than the men at the moment. It sort of feels like we really should have done theirs before the men's in some ways.
So I anticipate that a personal favorite lifter of my own, Miss Kuo Sung Chung, is going to be at least in contention to appear in that women's book somewhere with kind of her decorated record. And she, especially with one of your most recent Instagram posts, has been a point of serious contention on that press out rule. And I think it's kind of fresh on everyone's mind, especially with Yang Ji as well, and that press out that they called there. So I think that I've seen you kind of ride the fence of like, there's pros, there's cons to eliminating that rule. What do you see as those pros to eliminating the rule? What do you see as possible cons of eliminating the rule?
Well, first of all, I just want to credit you on that transition. That was fantastic. Just how you
That's
seamlessly went.
Seb, they pay me the big bucks for a reason over here.
Oh, I was really impressed with that. When he pulled in Kuo Sung Chung, I was like, okay, this is interesting. And then suddenly the press out came through.
Smoothly goes right to it. Yeah, I'm on my A game.
So I think the main thing is you have to think about why the press out was there in the first place as a rule. And really, it goes back to the fact that there used to be 3 lifts, the snatch, the clean and press, and the clean and jerk. And so you have to create rules in order to separate the clean and press from the clean and jerk. And so something like saying, well, you just can't press out on the jerk is an easy way to separate those two lifts. And then obviously the clean and press got removed from the sport, and thank goodness, because I would have been awful at that. And we're still left with the layover of having that rule that separated it from the clean and press. So I don't think we need the press out rule personally. It seems like it's the last bit of subjectiveness. Is that the word? Probably. In the sport, for a sport that's so focused on numbers and just precision, and there's nothing left to doubt. It's just a purely numbers-based sport. To then have that where someone can hit a lift and they get given a 3 white lights when they really shouldn't have based on the rule, or someone does a lift that looks pretty good and they get reds or something like that. It just seems totally unfair, and it's the one final thing that I think is holding the sport back from being. Well, it's not the last thing because the sport is incredibly unfair to begin with, but it's one of the few last things that's keeping the sport somewhat unfair, I would say.
I also think that it lends to making the sport a little bit spectator unfriendly, and that a lot of spectators of the sport don't understand the press out rule. So when they see a no lift for something like that, it's kind of like somewhat of a turnoff for them.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that, and I think that people are worried that the aesthetics of the sport would be lost. But the truth is, I mean, it's not like it. The fact remains that the most efficient way to put a bar overhead is by locking it out. So it's not like people are going to start now training to press lifts out or anything. It's just that if someone has done all the work and they get the bar there and there's a little wobble in the elbows, saying that doesn't count just seems ridiculous. But we're not going to suddenly start seeing the anthropometry of weightlifters shifting towards, people with enormous triceps and, very short arms or anything like that. It's just going to stay how it is. So I don't think people need to worry about that so much. And you're right, it just doesn't make sense to a lot of people. Like so many times people say, why was that a no lift? And the problem is you also see a lot of people say, oh, it's not, we should keep the rule. We should just educate the judges better. I don't think people realize how much training they go through and how much they've got, like how many sessions they've refereed and how many courses they've done just to get to where they are. And there's still going to be this certain level of, well, I think it was, and I don't think it was. And I don't think you can train that out of people unless it's literally there is no wobble at all, in which case basically everyone's going to get red lighted because not everyone has a hyperextended elbow. So it seems like, it's holding the sport back ever so slightly.
And now they've added these levels of subjectivity where, okay, there's the jury review and then there's the coach's card that they can pull. And it's just like it slows the meat down so much.
Uh-huh. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you've got to think for the athletes in the back who they're timing their warm-ups and they have a rough idea that it's going to be 1 minute per lift, maybe 2 minutes sometimes. And then suddenly there's like a 10-minute interlude where they're trying to work out whether it was or wasn't a press out. And it's like, they got it overhead. Just give them the lift and let's move on,
And all of a sudden things are moving so slow that Kianush is back there fighting people because he's so mad because he wants to go out to the platform. He's throwing stuff.
He's just having a brawl at the back. Salimi's yelling at the judges. And it's just like, I thought you were tired. Why are you even still here? It's just getting in the way of the sport.
So when you look,
especially when you've got someone like Wo Sing Chun, and it's like, she's such an amazing lifter, and I want that 110 to just be an undisputed world record. Yes. But it's always going to be disputed because based on the rules, it is a no lift, but they gave it to it. Like it's a press out. And so if she's getting given that to set world records, but someone does less than that and they get a no lift, and that means they no longer get a medal. Like that is so ridiculous. It's so stupid. Yeah.
When you look at the sport as a whole, are there other rules that you also kind of feel that same, maybe not to the same degree, but you feel the same way about some things that you would possibly change?
I've never really thought about this, but I don't know what the rule about. So there's a rule where if you catch a clean in the bottom of a clean and you readjust the bar, I think it's called like onto the meat of the shoulder. It's like they've got this really weird wording. Basically, you readjust it from down here up onto there and then stand up. That's a no lift. And I don't know why that is. And maybe it's an injury prevention thing. Like, if your elbow touches your knee, that's a no lift. That makes sense because that causes injury. People, hurt their wrists by doing that. But I don't know what the point of the not it being allowed to readjust in the bottom of a clean is. That's an odd one. So I don't think there are many rules that are wrong, but I think there are lots of different ways that the IWF should change the sport, at least in the broadcasting sense, to make it appeal to people. Because it's just, I've used this metaphor a few times now, and I don't know if it really holds its own under scrutiny, honestly. But this idea that like you're only seeing them coming onto the platform and you're missing everything before that, and it's like watching what do you watch in America? Like I don't know what you guys are NFL. It's like watching an NFL game, but the camera is only in like the final 10 yards of each side.
Okay.
And you miss everything. So like you don't know what's happening, and then suddenly someone runs through the finish line and scores, gets a touchdown. But you're missing everything that happens in the middle of the game. And in weightlifting, it's almost like you're missing what is so interesting, which is, did Keanu actually just jump from 120 to 170, or is that a rumor? Yeah, he probably did. Yeah, with straps as well, I think. And or like, was there a bit of a battle? Were the weightlifters eyeing each other up? Is Gadelli still on the bar even though she's a Young's at 160? Like all of these sorts of things, we miss so much of the context of what's going on behind the scenes. Not least, the excitement of what the coaches are doing. But that's not mentioned, and it's not put into a easily digestible way for the consumers essentially to understand it. But that stuff should be turned into part of the drama. It's like, oh my word, Spencer Arnold's sprinting over to get a change in weight, but we never know that's happening or anything. So I think they should do a lot to change that side of things.
That's you, Seb. That's where the IWF hires you.
No, they won't. The IWF doesn't know I exist. The IWF doesn't know anyone exists. I really don't think. If I think you spoke to the people at the top of the sport and you said, who are the major players in media, I think they would know Hook Grip and ATG because they've done deals with them before in past years to provide them with media. But other than that, I don't think they know what their Instagrams are like or their YouTube channels. I don't think they know who Weightlifting House. They wouldn't know who like Zach Tallender was, even though like, he doesn't do media for the sport, but he's like a famous person in the sport. But I don't think they know who any of us are, to be honest. Yeah. Zach's
a good one because I think that he posted a video kind of like theorizing about a weightlifting meet where essentially a lot of the unpleasant rules that people object to are peeled back. The press out rule is removed. You're not limited to 3 attempts.
So yeah, I like that.
What myself and my business partners have done is July 3rd, we're hosting what we're calling the Max Out or Blackout Classic, where we're peeling back all of those rules. Peel out or press outs are not a no lift. You can take as many lifts as you want. If you miss a lift, you get 3 more attempts on a 1-minute clock to try again.
I love that. Yeah, I've thought about that.
So, and in the kick, so we kind of, I don't know if you're familiar. Are you familiar with like the WWE, like professional wrestling?
Yeah.
So the way that I see it is it's this perfect merger between the theatrics of WWE and all that is beautiful about weightlifting. So we're offering cash prizes. We're hanging those cash prizes from briefcases from the ceiling where the athletes will have to climb ladders to go and get their cash prize upon winning. Oh, yeah.
Oh, really?
Oh, I'm dead serious, Seb. I'm not kidding.
I thought it was like a vertical jump test you were going to come up with, and like,
oh no,
the higher you jump, the more cash you grab or something.
Oh, that's not a bad addition.
Everyone
gets like stage names to lift. We're coming out through smoke. You get an intro. It's going to be a raucous affair. If it was allowed, if the COVID regulations would allow it, I would fly you over so that you could enjoy it as well.
Oh, I would love to come. I actually think that's a really good idea because we were considering doing that kind of thing, but obviously in the UK, where we basically just change the whole thing, and we actually provide like a large incentive through cash for the best weightlifters in, maybe even Europe to come and lift. And then you can just change it where it's like, it's not one platform. Maybe it's 5 platforms with 5 athletes on, and they each have 15 minutes to record the heaviest snatch they can. And as spectators, you can just walk around and watch them, and they can just lift as they want. There's no 1-minute gap where nothing's happening. There are so many of these rules that you can change. And like the one that you said where if you come out, you've got a minute. You don't have to hit it first time, but you've got a minute to try and hit it. So like come out at the start, try and snatch. And if you miss, wait 50 seconds and see if you can get another one in during that minute. Like that sort of thing would really make the sport quite exciting. Like not for the Olympics, but like there's no reason why that can't be a style of competition.
Yeah, and I think it's a lot more spectator friendly that way by putting in those fun rules. You know what?
Yeah,
When we hang up here, I'm gonna send you over the rules that I've got so far, and
please
you
do.
let me know what you think, and you
I'd
can kind
love
of
to.
bounce some back at me.
Yeah, yeah.
All
That
right,
sounds
let's get back to some actual weightlifting talk
cool.
here. So Tokyo, we are not far out from Tokyo at this point.
Mm.
5 months. Do you know when the weightlifting officially starts? What the date is? It's August,
I want to say it's July 24.
July 24th. So
Yeah,
before we even get to August. Okay.
yeah. And then
Okay.
it
Cool.
finishes August 5th, I think,
Okay.
with
I
a
think that's it.
2-day gap. Yeah.
Yeah. So, in terms of Tokyo as a whole, because actually stepping back,
Mhm.
Seb, when you do these live streams, do you have all the notes of the lifters in front of you? Because your memory, if you don't, is literally the most astonishing thing I've ever seen.
It's actually sometimes I have a few. Normally I have none. Um,
Okay.
but I'm good. I've always been good with that. Like data and just remembering facts and numbers. I'll still crack, I'll be watching a nature documentary with my girlfriend and I'll be like, oh, did you know that there'll be, as many as 5,000 of these dolphin in a megapod? And then David Attenborough will go, there are 5,000 dolphin. And it's just like, I just remember weird stats from when I was a kid. But I've been able to do that with weightlifting quite nicely. I mean, there are a few websites that are good for data. Like there's the one that I really like, at least for the Olympics, has been iwf.net/qualif/menu. And that just has like
Okay.
all the Roby points and the competitions that counted towards the Olympic qualifying period. Um, but no, generally I know every athlete's best numbers and I know when they did them and I know their best training lifts and variations. Um, I don't know whether that's a good thing or not, but I've just watched so much weightlifting and rewatched the
And
same stuff so many times that I can recall it.
second compliment coming at you, your
Oh,
pronunciation of the names. I don't
yes.
know if you're actually getting them right,
No.
but you say it so confidently. I'm like, oh,
Yes.
that's how you say it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
Like
a lot of it is just
Ergashev's first name, I'm not even gonna try it.
Ed Camjon. Oh, I don't know if
See?
that's how it sounds though, but I recognize that most people have never heard anyone say it. So if everyone hears me say it, then I just basically get to decide how it's now pronounced. And
Yeah.
sometimes I have given people the wrong pronunciation for names, and then I've heard that pronunciation come back to me, and I'm like, wow, I started this, and I feel really bad for the athlete because I've just truly ruined their name.
So what are the names that you're actually looking at in Tokyo that maybe people aren't talking about as much, or maybe they're not getting the recognition that you think they should? The ones that are flying under the radar.
I think the person that's flying under the radar the most is the Belarusian 96 called, well, I thought it was Yoheni Sakantsu, but I was told that it's actually Evgeny Sakantsu. So I'm going to say Evgeny because I don't want to ruin this guy's name as well. But Evgeny Sakantsu, he was a 96 briefly, then he went up to 102, won the World Championships, and then disappeared. And he's not yet able to qualify for Tokyo. But the qualifying period got extended by a month. So we've got until the end of May. And apparently there's a rumor in the Belarusian camp that they're going to send him to go to this competition. If he goes, he'll easily qualify. And then all of a sudden, I don't think it's guaranteed that Mezzo or Tian would actually win if he was there. Because he was, as a teenager, he did like 180, 220, which is totally enormous. And no one really knows about him. And he's been away for 18 months. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back and does, 85, 25, or maybe 185, 230 or something like that, and really surprises everyone because, everyone's so excited for this 96 kilo category. And no one's really talking about the fact that he could actually be the person that wins it or who takes a medal. So definitely excited to see him. Who else? I mean, there's so many good categories. I think on the women's side, I'm excited to see the 64s because so much has happened there where Deng Wei is going to be the runaway winner, but
Yes.
then all of the North Koreans are no longer going. And most likely Romania's not going to go. Or they really shouldn't go. The ITA has told the IWF to ban them. So that probably means that Loredana Toma won't be there. And then suddenly you've got all of these European and Canadian and British women who are all lifting similar types of weights, fighting for those medals. So I think right now the Canadian Maud Charon, I think she's outstanding, and I think she's going to take the silver. I think she's just managed to pull herself away. And she's had an amazing story. We interviewed her recently, and she went from like gymnastics to circus. Like she was doing like juggling and handstands professionally, and then CrossFit, and then weightlifting. And in like 3 years, she's like the best, basically, or one of the best. So I'm really excited to that. I mean, oftentimes it's not about the person who's going to run away and win, like watching Lasha. Sometimes it's also the most competitive weight categories are the most exciting ones.
Yeah, I think because the Canadian girl, and her name eludes me, she just kind of got like a really big spike in popularity and eyes on her at the Pan American. What did she total at Pan Ams?
107, 133, so 240.
Which is huge. I mean, it's not huge compared to what Deng Wei is going to go and hit.
Compared to everyone else, it is.
Yes,
so it's
very,
exciting.
very competitive, especially for someone who's so new into the sport. So we might not even be seeing where her ceiling is. You know, maybe another quad goes by and she is someone that can compete with Deng Wei. I didn't think I'd ever say that someone's actually going to compete with Deng Wei.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, she could. I think what we're seeing is that women who get into the sport, having been involved in gymnastics, are just superior. Like that's how it seems.
100%.
And it might just be because we're seeing countries where gymnastics is really popular they start doing more weightlifting, and therefore obviously there are just more women who have done gymnastics who get good at weightlifting. Or maybe it's the fact that gymnastics actually makes you a really good weightlifter. And I think that's probably what it is. It's just amazing how, I mean, Kate Nye and Jordan Dela Cruz and Matty Rogers did cheer, I think, and then Maud Charon, and just it seems like everyone that I interview has done some level of gymnastics on the female side of things, and they just all have this ridiculous awareness of their bodies. They have incredible lockouts. They're so efficient. So yeah, I could see Maud being 112, 140, by the next quad, something like that.
Yeah, I interviewed Dave Tilley, who's a gymnastics coach in the States, and he echoed that exact sentiment that you just said. These gymnasts, they just understand how to move their body around a fixed object, a bar. So when they get the barbell in their hand, it's just natural for them.
Never thought about that. In gymnastics, the bar doesn't move and you move around it. And in weightlifting, the bar does move, but it's still kind of fixed in some ways. Oh, that's really interesting. I'd never considered that. But yeah, I think that's definitely right. It's just, and also, I think weightlifting is easier than gymnastics. Like not just in terms of how many people compete, but just just how difficult and grueling the training is. Like speaking to Kate Nye, and she says, "Oh yeah, we trained 8 hours a day," and I can't do that in weightlifting. It's like 4 hours a day. So there's loads of time where I'm not training and I get to recover. So it's just easier. And it's like, wow, that's a world champion weightlifter saying that weightlifting is easier than her gymnastics training. And I think that's probably true.
Kate is going to be another good one to watch. I thought that she was going to be in slightly better shape for Pan Ams, but I'm very hopeful for where she'll be within the next 4 months.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, she's had a tough year of training with injuries and that kind of thing. And she's a fair bit down from her best from 2019, even though she weighs more. But now she's over with Spencer Arnold. There's not a lot that he's going to be able to do, really. As a coach, you can't make someone that much better in 6 months, really. But he can at least provide the structure of, the fact that she can now train with 3 other Olympians in a team with a coach who's got eyes on her every single day, rather than, in the past, she just trains on her own in a garage with a remote coach and he's done an amazing job, obviously, like a ridiculously talented coach. But having someone in person watching you with other good teammates, I think, will probably transform her over the next few months.
Harris is another one that I'm very interested to watch. I watched him at 2019 Worlds, and with my jaw on the floor at what he was capable of. He's kind of taken somewhat of a small step back from that, but he is kind of ramping back up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then Jordan Dela Cruz, again, all these athletes from the same team, and she is
Jordan Dela Cruz is something else.
Yeah, she went 6-6, 89, 111, 200 total. That is just she should. I think she'll medal at the Olympics, which will be absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I was a huge fan of Alyssa Ritchie, just her technique and the aggression in her lifts. And Jordan Dela Cruz came along, and people said, Alyssa Ritchie who? They completely forgot who she was. But Jordan is genuinely very, very impressive. Mm-hmm. Now, we kind of talked about who should be getting recognition. who do you think is going to be some of the biggest omissions from the pool of lifters? There's a lot of talk around the Chinese team and who they're gonna leave home because they can only take so many.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the deciding who from the women's side goes for Team China is almost more savage but easier because they have, say, 7 weightlifters to choose from, all of whom will win. So it's like you just got to pick 4 of them, and you can almost do that based on who they think, are they coming to the end of their career? Do they deserve another Olympic gold? And they select them. But on the men's side, they don't actually have 4 who will definitely win. So it's trying to work out of the 2 or 3 that might not definitely win, who's the most likely to win. So it's a little bit tricky. So, I think there's no way they can't send Shizi Yong. I mean, I don't know if you saw, he just, the training, him warming up for this last competition, he missed every single lift on the way up to coming out and hitting a world record. And there's this footage of it. He misses 140 a bunch of times, can't snatch 150, and then he snatches 169 world record, which is insane. But he's going to go because no one can beat him. I'd be very surprised if they didn't send Liu Xiaojun, even though he has fewer Roby points than Li Dayin. But I think China will reject the offer for Li Dayin, and then it will get handed over to Liu. And then it comes down to, is it Tian Tao, is it Li Fabin, or is it Chen Lijun? And I think Chen Lijun did enough to prove that he's the guy. He went 6-6 and he smashed it. And then it's hard because, Tian Tao looked pretty average for him the other day. He was way down in the clean and jerk. So it's such a difficult job. But it's just, it's the old trope of the hardest thing to do in Chinese weightlifting is win nationals. The easiest thing is to win the Olympics. If you can win nationals and get selected, then the competition outside of China is much simpler.
Tian Tao is another one that has to give the Chinese Weightlifting Federation just such anxiety with his inconsistency. It's got to be so hard. So I really wouldn't be surprised if they went with Fabin over Tian Tao, especially with how competitive Tian Tao's division is going to be. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I don't think Mezzo did a great job at discouraging China from sending. I thought he was going to try and do something huge so that Team China goes, okay, there's no point in sending Tian. But he really didn't. He didn't lift as well as he's done in the past. So they might send him, but I don't know.
And Seb, you're more plugged in with this than I am, so you can confirm or deny my suspicion here. I am very, very suspicious about Li Dayin's performances. In that 2019 Worlds, he looked like he could have smashed Liu Xiaojun. Absolutely ran away with it. And Liu somehow wins. He out-snatches
What are you suggesting?
Easily. And then all of a sudden, he can't make a clean and jerk. Seb, I want you to declare to the world that the Chinese Weightlifting Federation is fixing these competitions. I love Liu as much as anyone. Yeah. But I feel that they are just fixing these competitions and telling Li to take a dive.
I don't know. Li, in his defense, Li Dayin has the second highest total of anyone in that category so far, which is pretty good. And he did have surgery recently on some part of his back. I don't know if it was upper or lower. And I imagine that caused him some problems in the clean and jerk. But you're right, because when I look at Li Dayin, I just think physically you are on another planet in terms of how strong you are compared to these other lifters. In terms of what you pull and squat, I bet you make everybody look weak. Serious, he's so strong and so muscular. I don't know how he only weighs 81, honestly. Even in person, he's a big guy. It's really bizarre that he weighs so little. I don't know. There's the whole idea that maybe Team China desperately wants to send Liu because of what that does for Team China. It just looks so good to have this guy winning over more than a decade internationally and being the best. And also it's his last competition, so before he retires, so giving him a send-off and then they can release Li Dayin properly into the world. So there's a chance of that, but I don't see why they would make him, because they can just turn down Li Dayin's position. Li Dayin can still win, and then Team China can just say, no, we're not sending him, and then Liu will get the invite to Tokyo. So I don't know why they would do that. But China actually has, on the men's side, has a real problem with consistency at the moment because it's not just Tian Tao, it's Li Dayin, it's Lu Xiaojun
It's
as well,
Lou.
to be honest.
Yeah.
Shi Ziyong still gives me kind of heart attacks in the clean and jerk. Like I'm never convinced he's going to jerk it. So yeah, they're all kind of worrying, honestly.
He is that Shi Young is such a performer. How he
Yeah,
collapses to the platform after every lift, the trolling of the crowd, the
yeah.
chalking the bar. I don't think I've ever seen an international level lifter chalk the bar before.
Apparently he was ill, and and so he didn't, and maybe had some, he was contagious or something,
Ah,
and so he didn't want to put his hands
okay.
into the chalkboard and get other people ill. I mean, that could be wrong, but I heard that, and that kind of makes a bit of sense because I don't know why he would walk up to the bar with his own bar of chalk and then just rub it all over and then chuck it off and then lift it. I've never seen that. That was kind of weird.
With that inconsistency, I think that there's a big chance that some of the bigger names in weightlifting may actually flop in Tokyo.
Yeah.
Some
Mhm.
names that I'm very concerned about.
Mhm.
Mezzo, I love Mezzo as a lifter, but
Yeah.
the snatch, I
Yeah,
was
I know.
yelling at my TV the same way that you were
Yeah,
during
yeah,
that. Please
yeah,
don't do this, please,
yeah.
Mezzo.
'Cause why are you doing this? Why do you open
And
so
then
heavy? He doesn't need
and
to.
then Simon Martirosyan,
Oh my God.
I heard some stories about him about how he was off like fighting in a war, so
Yeah,
he
yeah.
couldn't train. But he's another one. He's a lifter that I love. That video of him going, what did he do? 20, 70, 120, 170
And
to
then straight to
210 or whatever
220
it
or
was.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, I
He
love that
totaled
video.
like 380 in 5 lifts or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that was
he's another
ridiculous.
one that his recent performance really gave me the heebie-jeebies. Is there anyone
Yeah.
else that kind of you're looking at as like, ooh, I don't know what might happen in
Well,
Tokyo?
I'm obviously concerned about Lasha, but no, I mean he'll be
Have no
fine.
fear.
Um, is there anyone else that I'm concerned about? It tends to be that the best lifters are the most consistent, and that's why they end up totaling the most because they make the most lifts. But yeah, with someone like Meso, I do think, why don't you just open lighter, um, and just take big jumps? Because it really doesn't matter what you hit on your first attempt; it's what you hit on your final made lift.
Yep.
So like, why don't you just go 70, 76, 81, and just build a little bit of momentum through it? But then at the same time, he's a performer and he absolutely loves pressure. He loves this idea of, I've missed my first two clean and jerks and I've got to hit the world record on my third, and everybody's watching. And like that's when he's going to make it. So he kind of does well by having missed his first two, but it's not a feeling that I like to have watching him when I'm just panicked and thinking he's going to miss. But no, I think most people will do as we expect, but I probably predict that one of the Chinese weightlifters will, on the men's side, will bomb out and won't win. I reckon that will happen to someone.
Yeah.
It just seems likely. Yeah,
And why is it going to be Tian Tao?
yeah, I know. I love those questions. It's like, who are you most looking forward to seeing at the Olympics, and why is it Lasha? And that's like those sorts of questions. Yeah, no, Tian Tao. Yeah, he could definitely be. He'll either bomb out or he'll miss his first two lifts and then jump up to a world record and make it and
Yep.
win. Like he's so capable, but
170 miss, 180 miss, jump to 187 on his third and hit that, and a world record, and we're off to the races for
yeah,
clean and
exactly.
jerk, something
Yeah,
like that. But yeah, I
yeah.
think the pinnacle of consistency is the reason why I reached out to you for this podcast, is to talk all things Lasha. I think even since I sent the original message to you on Instagram, we've seen
Come up
feats
again.
that we didn't even expect from him with the most recent total. And something again that I want to give you praise on is you drew a fantastic analogy between Roger Bannister and Lasha, where Lasha hits a world record, a weight that's never been lifted before in human history, and
Hmm.
it's the easiest lift you've ever seen. People
Yeah,
from the outside looking in, they say, "Oh, why is he going so light?" And you just want
yeah,
to
yeah,
shake them and be like, "No one's ever lifted that before. Shut up. Just
yeah,
appreciate it."
yeah,
Versus like other people who have broken all-time world records, like Roger Bannister, who collapsed across the finish line.
yeah.
So could you expand upon that thought a little bit more about what it's like in your head to watch someone like Lasha dominate with such apparent ease?
Mm. Yeah, I always say, whenever I talk about Lash and some of his biggest lifts, I always want to contextualize it in what's happened throughout history, because I hate the idea that people just get into weightlifting and they see him doing this and they don't understand how long we've been waiting and the people before me have been waiting and discussing, is 225 possible? And there people are, and for so many decades, it was like, there's no way anyone's going to snatch 225. Can someone do it? Can they not? And then people suddenly get into the sport and they just see it and they think, oh, he'll do 230. And I'm like, no, hold up. Let's just appreciate the fact that he didn't even snatch 224 and he just went straight to 25. Let's just like appreciate that only 3 people have ever snatched 216 and now he's 9 kilos into no man's land on his own, just rewriting history. And so I think it's important that people understand the giants that sort of paved the way and then how far ahead Lash has been able to pull away from that. But in terms of how good he is, I mean, I've said this before a few times as well, but it's almost like when Shi Ziyong or Liu Xiaojun put a world record attempt on the bar, it's like, oh, we get to now see, are they capable of doing this lift? If everything goes perfectly, can they do it? Whereas with Lasha, we just have this kind of feeling that he's able to do more than we've ever seen from him. And so when he selects a new world record, there's no doubt. It's almost just like, oh my God, he's finally showing us the 225 that we already knew that he could do, that he's never showed us before. And so like when we see 226, on the bar one day, it's going to be the excitement of, oh my God, we're about to see a 226 snatch, rather than, oh, I wonder if he can make this. And there's something about that confidence that you have in him, and everything looking the same and everything looking so apparently easy and perfect, that just you just never seen anything like it, I don't think, in weightlifting. Obviously by Sinclair, he's not number one, but he's also in a different era and he is doing things that no one else has ever done. And I think that probably by the end he'll be called the greatest of all time, even though he probably won't have the best Sinclair ever. I mean, he might do. It depends if he goes over 500 in the total. But even if he doesn't, I still think he'll probably be the best ever. He's just, he's doing things that no one else has done with apparent ease. And you don't really ever see that in sport. No. And that whole Roger Bannister thing, probably it's another one of those analogies where it doesn't hold up much under scrutiny because, yes, Roger Bannister collapsed over the line, but also he just ran a mile. So, like, obviously he did. And if you see Lasha, in training, you probably see just how brutal and difficult it is all of the time. And so it's much more difficult than it looks on the platform. But yeah, I mean, he's such an outlier. You don't really get outliers like that. Like he's Usain Bolt was an outlier, hitting 9.69 in Beijing and then hitting 9.58 shortly after. That was so far ahead because every 0.1 of a second is a meter. And so when you're 0.2 ahead of everyone and you see someone finishing 2 meters ahead of everyone in 100 meters, it just looks ridiculous. And when you rank all of the current weightlifters by Sinclair and then you put Lasha in, you have that same gap that you'd see with Usain Bolt or you'd see with like Mo Farah or whoever it might be. So yeah, he's on a totally different level, it seems.
I think that Lasha needs a 501 total to record the highest Sinclair of all time.
I think so. Yeah, it kind of depends because the Sinclair formula changes every 4 years based on the super heavyweights, basically. So we'd have to put both of their totals, him and Naeem, into the same like quad. But yeah, it's something like that. It's a low 500.
Okay. So yeah. Do you? I mean, what are your predictions for Lasha in Tokyo? Does he keep chipping? Is he just going to keep chipping at that record? Maybe he goes 495, 496. Does he keep us on our seats for another couple years, another quad to see that 500, 501?
I would bet money on him not totaling 500 in Tokyo. Oh. I just don't think it's going to happen. I mean, it just seems out of place for him. I mean, we saw him jump from 478 to 484 in competition, which is an enormous 6 kilo, increase on an all-time world record. But he's then only gone up by another kilo internationally. And so we saw him do 495 the other day, but that was training. So he might do something spectacular like snatch. He'll probably go for 267 to get the all-time clean and jerk, just because that's still the one that he doesn't have in actual competition, just because he's done it in training but not internationally. But I think at most we'll see him total 490, and then he'll save the other 10 kilos for the next quad or something like that. But he could keep going till he could be in 2028. Is it LA? I think
he's how old? He's how old now? 24.
No, he's 27. I think.
27.
I think I'll pull it
Uh-oh.
up. I actually,
Go to the Google.
well, that's the weird thing. Is like finding out that Lasha is like slightly younger than you is so bizarre because he
It's
just looks so
disorienting.
enormous. Yeah, he look. I mean, when you see him, he looks like he's like 400 years old in terms of like just the wisdom and strength that he possesses. He is 27. Yeah,
Okay.
1993.
Yep. So he's got another 2 quads in him.
Yeah, because the next one's only 3 years from now because we got delayed on this one. So Paris 2024, he's going to be 30, and then 34. Super heavyweights, they last a little bit longer, or at least they keep getting better until later, which is terrifying with him. So yeah, I think he'll be the first 4 Olympic gold medal weightlifter ever.
And maybe for people who don't know, what is Lasha's incentive to continue chipping at his world record? Why doesn't he? Because in other sports, if you have the chance to be the greatest of all time and you have it right here, you take it. Yeah. Whereas he's like, you know what? We'll just keep chipping away and getting closer and closer.
Yeah. I wonder. Well, I think there's a few things. I mean, obviously, in terms of incentive, there's got to be a monetary incentive from the government, which is just. Yeah, it's world records every time it's money every time you hit a world record. And so, that was the reason supposedly why we never saw Alexiev clean and jerk. He said that he would be able to do 300 kilos one day, which I think is definitely true. But, he would go up a kilo and he just ran out of time. Like he just only made it to 255 or something like that. So there's probably something similar like with that. I mean, I know that the Chinese do it. Ilya, got given like $1 million for winning the Olympics, and he would get money every time he got a world record. So there's probably that, and then also the fact that it's more predictable. Like Usain Bolt can't run 9.68, and then 9.67, and then 9.66. But if he could, he probably would.
Yes.
But like you just run as fast as you can, and you're never going to see a marathon runner running and then thinking, I'm just going to slow down because I'm 20 seconds above world record pace. So I'm going to slow down a little bit and break it another time because it sucks so much. It's so painful. And so many things have to come together for you to win a 100-meter race. Whereas in weightlifting, it's a little bit more predictable in terms of your performance. So you can chip away like that. But I think most likely it's all monetary incentive as to why he's doing it. Yeah, I would have thought.
That's what I've always heard. It's the money for the world record. So, I mean, you don't get more money if it's a 2 kilo or a 3 kilo or a 5 kilo world record.
Yeah. And maybe it's also the legacy. Like there's something about the fact that every time he competes, it's a world record. And every time he competes, it's 6 for 6. He just never misses. Like he's missed the odd third attempt snatch, but not for a few years. So he basically never misses. He always sets world records. And that builds this really exciting narrative of him just, chipping away, getting better and better over the decade.
And I'm sure you get this question just an annoyingly large amount of times. What do you think the true limit for Lasha is? Because I think that 270 jerk, and I think that his coach even confirmed this, that the jerk is where things get a little bit wonky for him. I think there's maybe 2 or 3 more kilos in that jerk. Maybe a 273 would be maximum, but what do you see for the snatch?
Do you mean like right now or in his career, like in training?
Let's do both. Right now, end of his career versus end of his career.
Right now, I think he could have snatched 228 probably.
Yeah.
Just when he did that 225, it's funny because some people see it and they go, "Oh, he can snatch 240." It's like, no. He can't. Like you're just new to the sport and you don't understand it. And, sometimes you have to make, like, sometimes the heaviest lifts of all time look easy because they're too heavy to have made any mistakes on. So they have to look perfect. So maybe 228. That clean and jerk, he could have done 272 on that day. Surely he could have hit 600 pounds. Like 2 kilos it's not even 1%. It's so light. It's just so little added onto that bar. So he probably could have done he could have probably totaled 500 that day, 228, 272, I would have thought. But that was the first time I've seen him lift, and I've seen his teammates actually watch and care. So, like, when he did the 223 and the 265 a few weeks ago, we knew that wasn't his most because people watched and they just turned away and walked off. And so it's like, okay, you've seen this before, haven't you? Like, this isn't new. So yeah, right now I'd say 228, 272, which is just crazy.
Isn't that something else when his training partners are just like, just another day for Lasha. Don't even bother watching.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I've brought up the 100 meters a lot. I like sports that are like time or numbers more so than like field sports. But like, it's like someone in the 100. I remember someone saying to me, Usain Bolt, apparently he'll run sub 9. It's like, well, he won't. And, you're a dumbass. But but like, he might, if someone had said, he could run sub 9.5, at the start, you'd have been like, no, there is no way. And obviously he won't, and he never will. And probably no one ever will. But when you see someone go from like 6'9" to 5'8", you're just like, oh my God, he could actually go 9.49 or something like that. And that's what Lasha seems to be doing. Wait, you just can't believe. Before Lasha, no one would ever have believed that we might genuinely think that somebody could snatch 230. That is so preposterous. Yeah, like, it's just so ridiculous. It's just dumb. It's just dumb. Yeah, but
people in America love basketball, and I give them the analogy of like Wilt Chamberlain recorded that 100-point game, and I give them the analogy of what if Wilt had gone out and scored 101 and then 102 and then 103. I was like, this is what Lasha's doing. He's just continuing to do things that we've never seen before, and it's truly astonishing. Do you think that puts him, when it's all said and done, will the Lasha Talakhadze legacy be the greatest Olympic sport legacy of all time if the trajectory continues as it is right now?
I'd love to say yes, but no. Just because it's weightlifting, isn't it? Like, it's not a big enough sport, and there aren't enough people who've competed in it. Like when you look at, again, let's just pick Usain Bolt. When you watch Usain Bolt, part of you believes if everybody in the world had trained to sprint, he would still be number one, because everybody runs. The fast kids get put into sports. The really fast kids get pulled out into athletics. And if you run sub 11 as a teenager, you get a Nike contract, and then you're going to go and, you know what I mean? Like, just the best sprinter in the world is Usain Bolt. But I can't say with confidence that if everybody had started weightlifting when they were a kid, everyone, that Lasha would be number one. Just because probably he wouldn't, because most people never get to try it. And if they are talented, there's no way they get put into weightlifting. They get put into the NFL or something like that. I mean, like, just watched this video the other day of a guy hang power cleaning 210 as an NFL guy, or he was in college. It's like, does that person have any idea how impressive that is? So I'm not saying that guy would beat Lasha, probably not, but I'm not convinced that Lasha is the best weightlifter that there could be. But he's the best we've ever seen. And the fact that things are getting broken by this much, the world records are getting broken by this much, shows that it's an underpopulated sport. Because if there was a way higher participation rate, you wouldn't see world records like you do now, because we would already have hit the limit and we'd just be hanging around there. But it shows that we're not really certain of what people can actually do, because we've just seen someone who should have ended up in the NFL end up in weightlifting. That's kind of how it is. And there are other, I'm a big fan of, blanking his name now, British rower who won 5 Olympics in a row. In rowing, and having been a rower and knowing how painful that is. So Steve Redgrave, that's his name. He won in 88, 92, 96, 2000, 2004. And it's like, to sustain that level of agony for essentially 16 years, from 88 to 2004, it's just like, that to me is almost unbeatable by anyone. And obviously people love Phelps. I don't know enough about swimming. I think it's almost like kind of unfair. It's like if you gave Usain Bolt medals for winning the 60, 80, 100, and 110. It's like, at the end of the day, he's the best swimmer, but like, why does he get 8 medals each time he swims, sort of thing? But yeah, he'll be the best weightlifting story of all time, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's hard. It's hard to quantify that. Like, what truly makes the best Olympic? Is it the most dominant athlete of all time? Is it the most decorated athlete of all time? Is
Yeah.
it who broke the most world records by what
Mm.
margin? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's hard to quantify. But something, because I know you're friends with him, and I need you to bring it up to him, Mr. Talander. He has a particular problem with individuals who step out when they catch a snatch. And
Yeah.
Lasha, on all heavy snatches,
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
steps
Subscribe.
out. So I
Yeah.
need you to tell Zach that he needs to bring that up with Lasha and let him know that his lifts are far less impressive because of that step out.
Yeah, I think Zach's he's so focused on his own technique, which is great. You know, you've got to be. And for him, that's a marker of my snatch wasn't quite good enough because clearly I had forward momentum in the catch.
Yep.
And if I'd have kept there in the bottom of the squat, that bar would have eventually fallen forward. So if I have to stand up and step out, it shows that it was moving forward. But you know what I mean? Like with Lash, it's like it's just too good. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I mean, if Lasha presses out, if he does anything, in many ways, it only makes it more impressive, the fact that he can take a step forward with 220 plus kilos overhead.
Taking 496 pounds for a walk.
Yeah, yeah, like that's ridiculous. Like if one day, God forbid, he does a duck step or something, and step or walks forward in the squat or something, like that will be just unreal. But he can do anything.
There was a Venezuelan lifter at Pan Am's who duck stepped backwards. I don't know if you've seen that clip with something like something like 200 kilos. That guy gives me a heart attack every time he lifts.
He's insane because he's an 89 and now he's a 96 and he front squats like 290. He has the strongest front squat in the category. So like once he's under things, it's easy.
Yep.
But his pull is so difficult for him. But he's phenomenally strong. I mean, it's like you look similar to me, like a relatively tall, longer-limbed person. So like, yeah. So well, it's fortunate at least in the start of the pull, it's not hard to get the bar moving. But for him to pull, he is like his hips and knees are in such a great degree of flexion. It's like us doing like a 5-inch deficit pull. Like it's so difficult to get the bar going. But then once it's going, he's totally away with it. But yeah, that step was ridiculous.
Yeah. All right, let's send this thing off into the sunset. Seb, is there anything that you want to plug, pitch? What do you got for the rest of the world for 2021? What's the big plan? I know Coaches Only is taking off. You've got phenomenal names behind you there. New books, videos you're excited to release. Will we see you in Tokyo?
No. No, you won't see me in Tokyo. But what you will hopefully see is me with various guests in person. Like we'll be all together filming high quality commentary style videos for every session. That's what we want to do.
Awesome.
So the Coaches Only thing, I mean, that was an idea I had where, I've done so many podcasts now with all of the biggest names, but there's still a barrier to podcasting, which is that there's not a lot of, I mean, you prepared for this and you sent me a few things and, we had a rough idea of what we were going to talk about, but it's not like I went away and spent 2 months creating this incredible presentation on why Lasha will be the best ever. And if I had, that would have been really interesting, but I haven't. And that's not what happens in podcasts. Podcasts are just conversation. And so I just felt like the next stage of gaining real information from the elite coaches in the world was to have them spend the time to do that. And to do that, you have to pay them. And so, it's not as easy as just doing a podcast. So I figured I'd come up with this Coaches Only thing. So it's, if you're a coach, you turn up, it's a 2-day online, what would you call it? Conference, essentially. 8 presentations from 8 of the most incredible coaches and even athletes in the world, highly targeted, very, very useful. So that's in a month. I don't know when this is going out. That's in June 5th, 6th anyway. And then the stuff that I'm most excited about is we're on the way to bringing out loads of new products. We've done bars and plates. I love our barbells. I genuinely think that they're the best barbells on the market for the price. The plates are very difficult to do. They're really good, but trying to bring out plates is like, it's like the hardest thing I've ever done to make that work and make it, cost effective and shipping. And it's just like, this is not something that I want to do unless I can make it easier. So I'm trying to put just calm down with the plates and just work out things that we can do. So like belts, sleeves, wraps, that kind of stuff. We're working with such a great manufacturer. We're going through so many different iterations to get these things looking and functioning as well as they can. So that's the stuff that I'm most excited about, is like the soft equipment side of products. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. And then more media. I'm hopefully going to go to Georgia in a few weeks, if I'm able to go and film Lasha pre-Olympics. If that works out, who knows? But I'm in contact with like the vice president of the the federation, and he's trying to get me in. If I knew the vice president of the country, I'd definitely, that would be great. Yeah, I would be it. But hopefully that'll work out, and then that'll be great to get some interviews and some footage of him. Yeah, pre-Olympics.
Awesome. I think everyone's looking forward to all of that. I'm going to be the first one in on that footage from Georgia. So, guys, we'll drop all of the links to that, Coaches Only, the Weightlifting House Patreon, the YouTube channel, the Instagram, all of that in the description below for your viewing pleasure. Thanks for coming out, guys. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, do that usual YouTube stuff. If you're on Spotify, you don't have to do any of that. You can just, listen at your own leisure, enjoy it, and then go along with your day. Seb, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a phenomenal conversation. Anything you want to leave the people with?
Oh, God, this is a lot of pressure.
So much pressure.
Enjoy weightlifting, train hard, and keep listening to podcasts. No, like and subscribe, because it makes a difference and it helps the algorithm. And algorithm is like the unspoken about driver for all content creators. So do those things and it will help out your favorite creators immensely.
Satisfy our algorithmic overlord. We'll see you on the next one, guys. Have a good one. See ya.